In my book, The Venice Variations, Tracing the Architectural Imagination, I look at three artifacts: a city, Venice, a book, Italo, Calvino's Invisible Cities, and a piece of architecture, Le Corbusier's Venice Hospital. As humans, we're wired to look for ideal patterns, for stories, for ideal places, for patterns in art, in literature, in architecture, in film, in science, technology and mythology. And Venice is one of those artifacts that even if we don't know where they came from, even if we remain in relative ignorance about how they evolved, they provide us with models and they provide us with constructs, paradigms of experience and terms of comparison, which revitalize the imagination. The Myth of Venice was a translation of unofficial historiography or legends and myths that people have developed about their city onto official historiography by a number of humanists in the 16th, 15th and 16th century about the political world and the social world of Venice. The legends and the myths concerned a variety of fairy tales and stories about how Venice came to being. One myth, particular myth, traced the origin of Venice to Aeneas and the Trojans that came after the war at Troy to Italy. There is no substantiation about this origin, but this is not the point. What is interesting is that a city was traced in its origin to an epic and a myth. In my study, I looked at the networks of Venice, the canal and the street network, and tried to find whether there's something in the spatial dimension of this city that inspires the imagination. Looking at the networks of canals and streets, we see that the squares of Venice, or the campi as they are known in Venice, are all interlinked into a network of pervasive centrality. This is a powerful result because it shows a pattern of evolution since early days and a social pattern as well. There is another important property that this square, this campi have. They are part of a combinatorial language in the sense of the square, a church, the associated tower, a well, a canal, a bridge arching over the canal, and then the loading steps that connect the square with the water. So moving through Venice from square to square, you come across the same elements in the same combinations. So it becomes a recognizable order this is the design of Venice, but without a conscious design intention. Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities is about Marco Polo, the Venetian explorer, describing to Kublai Khan, the Emperor of Mongolia, the cities in his empire. And these are not cities that Calvino has visited, that Marco Polo has visited, but cities he invents in his mind. So what is important is not so much the Venetian traveler, but Venice as the underlying model through which Marco Polo describes other cities. Authors describe the structure of the book as a diamond shape. My analysis shows that there are conceptual relationships in the sense of variations of symmetries in a tessellation which are built into the text, like reflection, translation, glide reflection and rotation. And if we plot these symmetries on the diamond shape, we get an interaction between the combinatorial possibility that the diamond shape and the network contain within, and then the author's conscious intention. The hospital is one of the last projects in Le Corbusier's oeuvre. The design was taking place between the first 5 years of the 60s and after Le Corbusier's death. One of the project architects continued working on the project for another 5 years, but it was never built. The hospital also is a modular scheme, and it consists of a network of routes that intersect in squares. So we see that the architects of the hospital have retrieved the non-designed architecture of Venice and they have embedded it into a new creative reality. Le Corbusier also spoke about the calle and the campiello. The calle means the street and the campiello is the campo or the square in Venice. And he said that these were the seeds of his inspiration in Venice. There are, of course, differences between the three artifacts. A city is different than a book, is different than a building, but we see that there are affinities which show that there is enormous combinatorial potential that inspires the readers and the viewer's imagination. The argument that I put forward at the end of the book is that Venice matters today because it is like the ancient artifacts of epic and myth that have universal significance over and above their particular conditions. It is like an improvised oral poem that contains fragments of other narratives that have already been sung by others. And if we think about the bards of antiquity that were singing poems without song sheets, to forget would have been one of the most precarious forms of existence. So in the book I make this argument about our capacity to produce these epics and these myths that is waning, perhaps. The Venice matters because the future we must strive to achieve must somehow create afresh the memory of what has gone before, extemporizing with whatever variations are available.